while I cough.
And one more thing that I would say with this organizational design question, I did have a different client yesterday tell me that, so client I'm leading a change management effort for, again, related to relocation of office. And that morning she had found out that a very senior leader in that organization was leaving, COO, and another executive vice president was also leaving. And I said to her, I said, oh my goodness, are they going to the same firm? And she said, actually they are, which was interesting. They got recruited separately, but they're going to, it's a new startup or something. But she is now seeing, she's got this really big hole. She reports up to the COO. So now her boss is going to be gone. This other guy is going to be gone. They're about to move in a couple months to a new location. So she's got she's just trying to hold all that together, but she can see that the departure of those two very senior people leave holes. And this association or organization has been trying to, they're too top heavy. So it helps because then maybe they can make some different changes, which then gets to the same topic we have tonight, organizational design, and how do we consult and do that. And again, I don't have much experience with that other than some nonprofits that I've worked with. So just really curious as to how we provide those services and how, especially how appreciative inquiry can be utilized.
Well, gee, we have nothing to talk about. Rita, you want to lead off? Question?
Lead off, Rita?
Your audio is not on.
Yeah, you're muted. I'm going to text Jennifer to see if she's planning to join us. Did you hear from her, Joe?
No.
Okay.
Lori and I heard from a couple of others all saying, gee, sounds really good, but my daughter's coming in from Europe and et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
I've lived through it, and I got involved in planning. I got involved in the planning. I did not lead it, and I got involved in different aspects of it. And I guess the chief question I have is that if you're talking about this type of change, the person who is the champion has to be able to do it. The person has to be stable.
Right.
The situation you were just describing, I wouldn't touch it because you don't know if that person is going to still be there.
Well, the person that told me about her boss leaving and the others, given that she's been there 30 some years and worked her way up from, I think, joined there right after high school. She went to college, so maybe right after college, and then has been there and keeps elevating up, and they would not be getting rid of her because this move is about to happen in a few months for her anyway. So I think she's going to stay there, but I think you're raising a really good point about companies who are in the middle of that kind of turmoil, but isn't that exactly when they need us? That's what we're here for. That's what our job is as OD consultants.
Well, yes and no. If the person is in a precarious position, they don't have the authority to pull it off. If someone,
I see what you do in terms of hiring someone. No, I get that. But she's seeing, so I left there. She wasn't asking me for any services. I left there thinking, oh my gosh, here's an opportunity. What if I recommended or said because there are other senior people there that know me that are still going to be there once this is public. I found out stuff before it's public. Just because she and I happened to have lunch yesterday. But opportunistically, I could, because I'm trying to grow this part of our consulting practice, I could say, hey, can I speak to so-and-so and just say, you're going to be going through a lot of changes. We would love to help you with that. Just like I helped others with blah, blah, blah. It's just that I don't have a great deal of experience with this.
Yeah. Do I have direct experience in the snow? Have I talked to people who've done it? Yes. So, and having lived through it and at the levels I was involved at it, I have a perspective. The curiosity, the thing I really wonder about in this is what's driving the need for doing this? Is there something in the environment? Is it something involving the competitors? Is the nature of the business changing? What's the environment like?
And in their case, I think they're very top heavy. They've been around a long time. They have a whole slew of, it is a dysfunctional, you know how all families are dysfunctional, all companies,
Yes.
I guess, it has been dysfunctional for a long time, and she has lived through it. She just says sometimes you just wait for your boss to get fired, and then fresh ideas come in. But I can see that they need help. And they would probably pay well for it. I just don't think it's something that we can compete in. I think they would go and hire a McKinsey, a Boston Consulting, a Booz Allen, and EY, that. But at some point, I would like to think that I can offer those services.
Well, I'm wondering about their outside environment. Do they have competitors? Is the industry changing, or is it something?
Yes,
that's
all of those things are true.
So what is the question I have first is what's the environment like? What are they competing against? What do other people have? What are other people offering that they don't have? What do their customers think? So it's an environmental scan.
But see, everything that you're asking is what we would ask anybody, right? I mean, that's
right.
part when we get engaged with them.
That's right.
And
that's the basic homework. So
backing off from specific companies and trying to think a little more generic design-like, from my point of view, everything you're saying, Rita, is right. How do you discover it is the question in my mind. And one of the ways to use AI is to, let's assume you have strong sponsorship from the CEO, because without that, you're not changing anything in your organization.
Right.
The mistake at one point of doing a major deal that went off beautifully well with the executive VP as my main sponsor. And the CEO came in and said, boy, this is really cool. This is fantastic. You've done wonderful work. I want you to stop everything that you're doing. I'm going to do it for the entire organization. Guess what never got done?
Yeah.
So I do hear, Rita, in terms of making sure you've got the CEO totally on board and open-minded about it. But assuming that you'd have that.
Assuming that I understand the AI approach, but even with taking that approach, I want to make sure I understand what's going on outside. I want to get a fix on that for myself before going in, because that affects the design and even the questions you talk about.
But see, I would do that with an AI process as well. That is,
okay.
What I would be doing is going to the major customers and say, what is it that we do that you value? Tell us about situations where we have hit the ball out of the park for you.
Mm-hmm.
And what made that happen? And debriefing and structuring your questions in such a way that you're looking at what were the factors of the organization that came together to deliver that value. Because from a customer's point of view, maybe it came from 5 different departments, right? And they were lucky enough to, because it's an outstanding experience, to have everybody brought under a central leader or put into an action team, or I don't know what happened. But the point being, that's what you want to find out is when we delivered maximum value to a customer, what did that look like from an organizational standpoint? Where did it all come from? Where did all the people come from? How did they work together most effectively to deliver that? That gives you a lot of information about, how should, can we continue to operate that way? Is that our norm? or is this a one-off?
Mm-hmm.
If our peak experiences with these customers are a one-off, but not the norm of what we do, what's the value of creating that as a norm?
Mm-hmm.
And
I totally agree with you on that.
so,
That's a basic point I start. And I guess the other question is, what has to change? Is it the structure? Do the processes, do the products change?
Yeah, and when, like, when you go through some of these Galbraith workbooks, there are those kind of questions that are in there. They're not necessarily AI questions, but we on this call would turn them into AI questions, right?
Yes and no.
yeah,
Yes and no.
I'm more
It might be.
yes than no, but
Like,
Well, part of the way I work is that I'm in AI. My questions will reflect that. I don't call it AI.
oh,
right. And we talked about that before. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I'm kind of blended. I will pick off what fits in this particular situation. So you understand that, but you do have to get into all those pieces. There are unintended consequences when you intervene in a large system. That's basic.
Yep.
So how do you structure most of the time when clients, if we're not working with them before, I think most of the time if they're brand new clients, we don't know anything about them.
Right.
We're being asked to give a proposal with fees when we don't know much about them at all.
Right. I phase it.
So how do you do that?
I phase it in.
You have like a getting to know you first?
I do an initial meeting, but then the first part of the project is an assessment. And with the understanding that depending on what we find out during this, what is discovered during the assessment will determine, one, whether or not there'll be further group work, and then what it will look like. Because we're going into it blind. We can't make I can't make something out of nothing.
Right.
So, and I would take, I would add to, or I would provide an additional thought. I'd be tempted to bid them something like a summit that is cross-functional down through the organization. And it's an opportunity to bring together different levels of the organization to explore when the organization has worked at its peak, been most efficient and effective for our clients, et cetera, et cetera. And, I would go through a full 2-day, all 4-phase summit, not with the intent of coming up with a final organizational design, but with the intent of, first of all, getting a bunch of people bought in and open-minded about what's going on. Because if it just comes down from the top of, guess what, guys, we're going to do the following, everybody gets caught blind and et cetera, almost no one buys in.
Right.
And you got a huge change management problem.
Exactly.
One of the things that I did at one point, and it wasn't specifically org design, but we did a 2-day summit, but we did it in two sections. We brought 200 leaders together. That might be a little overambitious, but and the first day, what we did was explore, the first 2 parts of the model. And then we said, okay, we want all of you to go out and in the next 3 weeks, conduct 3 AI interviews somewhere in the organization or with a client or however you want to assign those things, so that group becomes your data collection group. It's not the consulting group going and doing those interviews.
Right. It's them.
Yeah. Because
you allowed them to decide who the 3 that they were going to interview. Gave them guidelines or
guidelines.
Okay.
First of all, we prefer them not to be anybody that works with you normally.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Secondly, we want all levels of the organization. And as they fed that information back centrally, what we did was organize it. So in the second day, they had 800 interviews, the results of 800 interviews in the room.
You had 800 interviews?
They did 800. Well, remember, we started with 200. So they all went out and did three. Now 800 interviews.
Okay.
In an organization about the size, about 2,500. So, I mean, we really penetrated that organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 5 major themes came out very clearly, which, you know, and we brought them back and they told their high point stories from the interviews that they had. You know, they went all through that. We did the minimum of things to do the work for them, and a whole lot to make sure it was facilitated well on the, you know, on the outside.
Sure.
And then only when they had all of that did they begin to say what changes. You know, what have we learned and what do we do about that? And then in this context, what does that mean to the way our organization functions? When our organization has functioned most effectively, and we've heard now X number of stories about that from clients, from people that felt like they had delivered at their best, because I think it's important to talk to clients, but it's also important to talk to, I'm monopolizing, I apologize.
No,
But it's important to talk to clients. It's important to talk to people in the organization as well who feel like, wow, I had a really peak experience here. And I think if you talk to the client, they'd agree. You know, so you've got to have both perspectives, because things will have happened inside the organization the client won't know anything about, to make everything come together and gel correctly.
Yeah.
If that design group, or whatever you want to call it, has a chance to pull that all together, debrief it, and say, okay, so what does this mean to the way we're organized? Gee, should we be in teams? Should we be in functional teams? Should we be in cross-functional teams? Should we have a whole lot more opportunity to put special project teams together, given that we need a specific set of skills and abilities to service a particular client? How did they go into that client and determine what was needed, et cetera, et cetera? All of those things could be baked into the questions that you ask and the data that you collect. And from my point of view, the more you can get them engaged in analyzing the data and deciding what to do about it, you know, with a firm grip on, you know, where you're getting it, and even to the point of assigning or saying, hey, look, how would we set this up? And so I started with a small design team.
How many of you were consultants versus internal to the organization?
We were all internal. I was a consultant, but I worked for another part of the organization, and they borrowed me.
Okay. So how many then for the internal team?
For the design team, we had 6, including a communications manager.
Okay.
So she was always keeping us on track in terms of making sure everybody knew what was going on and making sure the organization knew what was going on and what we're going to do and how we're going to communicate, all those kinds of things. She was invaluable. And we designed the summit. That small team designed the summit. I mean, this is classical stuff that we've learned.
Right.
This is real application.
Yeah.
And I think if you came up with an OD design out of that, you came back and said, we heard you, we heard this in the organization. What we did, we literally had town halls with the entire organization over about 4 days. Now, they were all local, so that was easy.
That was after they collected the interview?
After we'd come up with everything, after we had all our conclusions, after we knew what we were going to go do, we brought it back to the entire organization and said, here's what we heard. Here's the stories we heard. Here's what those clients told us. Because of all of that, here's what we're doing. And I mean, this is a bit over the top maybe, but the outcome was, it was transparent. Lots of people knew they had input. everybody knew somebody that had talked to us, even if they hadn't talked to us.
Mm-hmm.
They could relate to what the stories were because they had similar experiences.
Or they had maybe even given their stories.
Yes.
Right? They might have been interviewed themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like 1 in 8 said, "Hey, that's my story," kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that, that kind of, as an overall proposed structure,
Yep.
makes sense to me. Rita,
Eh,
bring
I just-
reality in.
Yeah, I'm thinking, how many people in the organization?
It said over 2,000.
2,000. Located all over the place? Where are they? Where are the people?
We can't hear you, Joe.
Oh, you mean in mine?
Yeah.
Sorry, 8 different locations all across the United States.
And in your case, Cheryl, that you're talking about?
Oh, this one's just one, and they're pretty small.
Okay, so how many people? It's about
250.
that's okay. That's doable.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
That would certainly be the process that you described. The future. I'm thinking of future search too, but they're both comparable.
Yeah,
But
they are.
the AI process would certainly work. I'm one of the things that I'm really interested in is focusing on the future and where you want to go, and I think that would be an important part of the design process, which is certainly worked into the AI process.
Mm-hmm.
It's that visioning.
Yeah.
You have to get the past, present, and future somehow in there. So you could certainly work on it that way, but that would be preliminary. That would be that is your assessment, your method for assessment.
Yeah.
And from that is how you would build the rest of it. But you'd have to get that first part done, otherwise you're working in the dark.
Except that what I like about and Joe, what you just described is the classic AI
Absolutely.
process,
Yeah.
right? Is it's very quantifiable in terms of if you know enough and you say, here's how we can structure it. We're going to do the 2-day summit. We're bringing 200 leaders together. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to want them to conduct it like you outlined it. This is what I did for that IFMA presentation that I shared a few months ago. Like it was exactly that. There was I said what we're going to do. I could estimate my time in order to do all that, facilitate it, because I had to give them a fee for that. And I did put it into, this is what we do first. And then after that, this is what we do next. And so I did do it that way. But it wasn't about organizational design. It was to tackle a different problem.
Yeah.
But
it always follows the same.
Follows the same. Yeah.
I'm working on putting a proposal for an intervention involving a dysfunctional group. I'm going to use a collaborative. I'm going to use inquiry. I'm doing a lot of interviews. It's more traditional, and the reason I'm doing this is that because of the tensions within the group, I'm not comfortable in getting the whole group together in the room. Nor could I do it because of the nature of their jobs and the nature of their work.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do the interviews, and I have to give a sense. Yeah, that's.
And
but I'm only
how do
dealing
you
with
summarize? Yeah, are you having to protect confidentiality? Because that's a whole nother thing.
Actually, I make it very clear when I work that I destroy interview notes. I keep nothing. And maybe I can do that because of my degree. My doctorate says, look, this is how I do it. Understand, I'm bound by this. I could get my professional credentials, for better or for worse, depending. Now, research, I could be affected by how I handle this. I never have a problem with that. In fact, we just left a very dysfunctional project that we got invited into, and after the first set of after the first day and a half, we knew we were pulling out. And so what we negotiate is giving them a report with the understanding that all the interviews were gone, all the interview data is gone, because we didn't want to jeopardize anybody's position. That I negotiate up front, going in, and
So what kind of report are you giving?
I'm doing what the kind of report I provided with basic themes from the interviews.
Yeah.
There was also a data that I had from the organization that's publicly available, strategy and all that stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had employee satisfaction data going back 4 years.
Did you do your own employee survey on that, or you just?
No, I was fortunate enough to have an existing stable satisfaction survey that was done in the organization, and I could drill down to that part of the organization. And as we were looking at it, the drop that we saw in that data told us that, oh yeah, what we were hearing in the interviews was probably true. And well, the stories were just.
Yeah, the dysfunctional association that I helped a couple of years ago with AI, same thing. I mean, they had mentioned an employee survey to us. We did our own, and we did it one-on-one, talking with people, and then we also did an online. But it was very supporting of what they had already found out on their own, but didn't believe.
Yeah. We were able to, we had 4 years of data that we could use, and it just supported it. We were able to use, illustration, some of the stories, the fact that a number of people said this and it was repeated.
Yeah.
It just supported, we got out of it. We got the report. We said, good luck.
Yeah.
We gave them recommendations for the types of change that they were talking about, telling them, however, that if you're going to talk about the change process, unless people believe they're being told by leadership, it's not going to work.
So how did what came out of it then? How did it resolve? Did they do your recommendations?
I don't care if they do our recommendations or not. That's the type.
I'm just curious. Did they? Do you know?
I honestly don't think they'll do a blasted thing until they get rid of that one supervisor.
Yeah.
It's a deputy director. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the organization who brought us in is at a higher level and is well aware of it. So almost had the feeling that we were like verifying something that they already know. I'll find out what eventually happened. I think that in this kind of work, there are times when you just cut.
Yeah.
That was one of them. Normally it doesn't happen like that. It was interesting. First couple of interviews, I said, "Oh my Lord!"
And how?
And then I had a meeting with the leader who was involved, and her chief of staff walked out and said, "Now you understand what I go through every day." She's impossible.
Yeah. How many people did you interview, and how big was the organization?
Let's see. The interview. I'm trying to think. We interviewed about 40. We interviewed about 30 people. There were about 150 people. Actually, it was a little more than that. We interviewed about 40 people, and there was about 100 some odd people in the organization.
Wow.
Fortunately, they were geographically close, and we could deal with it.
Yeah.
But no way in God's little green earth would I ever recommend working for it. And I think it showed the importance of doing an assessment, because you don't want to get in too deep.
And sounds like it was a very hostile environment anyway. So, yeah.
Actually, what was really interesting is that the employees were wonderful. They were doing great work despite all of this, they were doing it. And I think it was just the nature of what was going on at the top levels in leadership, and let's say politically.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it there. But that's a negative story, and that's an unusual one. Fortunately.
So here's a different, to give you another, something that we're facing. Different bent, but I'd be curious to know how you respond to this. As a design firm, we design amazing workspaces for people to support them in their work. And we do we have a proprietary software survey system that we've done called the Work Performance Index. And then we added to it a couple of years ago. And now it's called, so WPI Work Performance Index. It's now the WPI-X, which is the X is for experience, because we can actually measure employee experience. So we've been doing this. One of the reasons why I joined Gensler is because of this. They've been doing this for years. I would go to conferences and hear them report on this. It's really, truly amazing how much they've invested in research to really try to measure the performance of workplaces and how they affect and impact employee experience. So we do a pre-survey, we design it, they move in, we try to wait 6 months. Sometimes they want it sooner than that. I've got a client right now that wants it in 90 days, but there has to be that waiting period. Then you ask them again, and then we can measure it. And because we've been doing it for decades, well, not decades, it's almost, I think, since 2004. So a good amount of data. We can then compare it to benchmark it to similar industries, without revealing peer, names or any of that. So it's a good benchmarking thing. This is the overall index, and this is the number, and this is where it was. So we do that, and we design these great workplaces so we can measure them before and after. So one of our clients came to us a couple of months ago and said, he heard a colleague of mine speak at a conference where I was also in the room, and heard that colleague speak on the agile organization.
Yes, okay.
I think my book is downstairs. I think I mentioned this at a previous. So The Age of Agile
Mm-hmm.
by Stephen Denning.
Mm-hmm.
So that book, which I read when it came out, and then I started rereading because this client brought this up and said, you have designed for us, you Gensler, I wasn't on the design team, but you have designed for us the most amazing workspaces that are agile, that can do everything we need them to do.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that our leadership is not agile. So these agile organizations that are supposed to have those, the squads and the tribes and the 3-week turnarounds or whatever it is, so that they don't have to get permission, to get approval before they can. And he's like, so you design all this stuff, but our organization is truly not agile. And we'd like for you to talk to us about helping us with that piece, which is very exciting. So the colleague that presented came to me, and the two of us presented to this client a couple weeks ago, and now they've got these budget issues that have to do with a global location for them. So it's on hold, but I'm hoping that it comes. And I just asked the other day, and our design team, who's very close to the client, and said they think they're trying to work it out. So it might come back alive, because we gave them a first, this is what we can do for you and with you. And they were excited, but then they had these budget issues. So we're waiting to see if they get resolved, in which case they can re-engage us.
Oh.
But I just thought that that's another sort of, it's different. It's not organizational design and restructuring and that kind of thing, but it's certainly helping the leaders see that they're designing these agile spaces, but they're not being agile themselves. So I wondered if either of the two of you have had that kind of.
Not quite that way. Not quite that way.
It's an interesting one.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm working on this issue of a journal, and one of the things that they were talking about, the article was talking about a problem in an oncology clinic, and they were talking about an activist approaches to reflection, and you can roll your eyes, but basically what it means is that things are changing so much that people are in the situation are connecting with different things and reacting to different things, different stimuli, different way that things are organized. You don't realize what's really going on, and you stop and thinking about it. They're recognizing that they're dealing with a system that is coming together in all different ways, and they don't know what to do. Think about an oncology clinic with people coming in, they have equipment, and interior design came up. how
Really?
they set up the chairs. And that was an issue that was brought up in the article. And I said,
Love
that's
it.
really, it was really funny because that made me think about something I do when I'm in an organization. I walk through an organization and I look to see if there's one place everybody walks by every day.
Mm-hmm.
I look to see if there's a hallway where they pass each other and say hello, a staircase.
Right.
It may not necessarily be a cafeteria.
We
And I
design,
found,
we design for those kind of encounters.
I have found that places where that happens work well.
Yeah.
I've also found where places where they took it away because they needed the space, all of a sudden stuff is not working and they don't know what caused it.
The company culture changed. Yeah.
Right. And then you start talking to them. Oh, I remember a time when we talked to each other. Well, where were you talking to each other? Oh, we used to walk through this courtyard. Oh. And so the organization sits back and said, we never realized that making this change would affect the organization. And I said, when you intervene in a system, you affected it in a very basic way.
Right. Exactly.
So my comment to the article is that you're talking about this very abstract thing. We want HRD people to respond to this, and I understand what you're saying. Your language is crazy, but you have to understand that what you're talking about are systems and how systems connect. People really have to go back to systems thinking when they're dealing with problems and understand how everything fits together. When you're talking about organization change, sure, you're talking about structuring boxes. You're talking about physical changes. You're talking about where an office is located, how people get to talk to their supervisors. That's part of the equation too.
Right. Right.
Which came out in the case with the patient care. I thought of you today.
Oh, that's so great. Well, it's interesting because what you also just said about because of the way, you have to think about all the systems and what you're messing with. So when we go to a lot of organizations now are moving to unassigned seating.
Yes.
There is no assigned desk. And our DC office, I'm now in the Baltimore office, but our DC office just did this a couple months ago. And when I go there, because I was there yesterday working, I'm going to be there tomorrow working, I just move around. I don't have any set desk. And I have to remember to take these with me because I'm often on the phone and then I don't have, my headset in order to be able to talk because I'm sitting out in the open and can't be doing what I'm doing here in the privacy of my home. So what comes out though from these is, and part of the change management process, that if we know our client is going to that environment, and especially if they haven't done that before, then part of the change management process that I'm shepherding in my role as a change management consultant related to workplace design is to help them anticipate that they're going to have people say, well, how do I know Rita's working when I can't see her anymore? She's not sitting at that desk where I know she's going to be every day. Because the dynamic seating or unassigned seating means that sometimes it means you can work anywhere as long as it's within sight of your department. That's one way of doing it. In our DC office, you can work anywhere. You don't have to sit within and among the teams that you would normally be working with. So the other day, I'm in the DC office, and I really needed to see, I was looking around for two people that I normally work with, and I went to sit in the area in which I would have been working. I don't always do that. I can pick anywhere to be, but this particular day, I needed a place to be quiet. I knew somebody was out on PTO and I could use her desk. And I knew it was near all these other people I usually work with. The whole day went by and I didn't see Laura and I didn't see Katie. And they were the two people I needed to see. And we have not developed I think there is an app where you're supposed to check in and say where you're sitting, but people don't do it. So I tried it once and it wasn't quite working. They were still working out the bugs. So if there's an app that you can do that, then at least you know where people are sitting, and you can certainly IM them and you can email them. It's just that there's something really easy, right? It's about those encounters. It's about those, just being able to look over and see somebody. And also when I'm in the DC office, I also walk around the office to let people know that I'm there for the day. And, you know, I can bump into somebody and see them, and I wouldn't normally have that conversation. But what happens is when you're designing these very different, radically different work environments than the way they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you have to anticipate what is changing, that like that supervisor, how are they going to be comfortable that they can't see that person that they're supervising? And that goes with working at home, right? Telework, that's been around for quite a while. And most people would say, well, you know, they have to produce, you know, we know. So there's the whole telework thing, but it's a different mindset when you're used to seeing somebody. Okay, so Rita teleworks 1 day a week, the rest of the time she's here, and I know she sits in that desk. Well, you're not there. So how do they know that you're even in the office and that you're doing the work that you need to be doing? So
It's
how do
simple.
they
You put a chip in everybody's neck, and then you have this massive computer that tells you where they are all the time.
And we had one client that was playing with something very similar to that.
To be very facetious about that.
Yeah,
I assume that I assume that would happen.
Like this is always with everybody, right?
Yeah.
So they track the phones, huh?
Yeah.
You know, what occurs to me is it's less of a where am I sitting and more of a what team am I on and what am I responsible for within the framework of that team and and what they've got to accomplish. So, I mean, a couple of things occur to me from totally ignorance. Okay, that is ignorance of actually doing it. But if when I teach teamwork, when we work to develop teams, of course, we want people coming together around a particular piece of business or work that needs to be accomplished. That could be what we do all the time, or it could be a specialized kind of thing. I'm not telling you that no. But the functionality of getting people together, planning what's going to happen over the next week, reporting back as to what has happened, what's the reality, that interchange of information so that we all know what's going on, what's stalled, what isn't stalled, what are we going to do about it. It's less important where I sit, perhaps, because I know once a week we're getting together to make sure that we're all in sync, that we make sure that we're all holding each other accountable to what we said we were going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's more of a function of how the team is managed, and I hate the word managed, facilitated, than it is physical location, perhaps.
Yeah.
The other thing that occurs to me is that to challenge the team and say, what if we are all doing this, what's our best use of the office space? They might very well say, look, we'd all really like to be together. You know, we're not together normally, but because this is a special project and we've been pulled from, I'm making this up, obviously. And that means that our flexible office plan really works for us, but we'd like to camp over in that corner primarily. But it's the team that's saying that, not management.
Right.
So what you're saying, you're challenging them with is, you have this wonderful workspace. How do we make this most effective for us? It's not, you know, and you can have some key questions about, so what does it mean when you can't find Sally when you need to have a conversation with Sally?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that the issue with the leader who can't be agile with the workspace may involve some coaching.
Right. And that is what comes out of this quite often, because there's only so far we can go in a facilitated change management process where we're raising the issues. And a lot of times it's very individual, right? So that person may need that individual coaching.
Yeah.
And actually, thinking about the project I've worked in, I've always built in a way to do some of that coaching with the person responsible for carrying it forward.
Right.
So it's helping the leader understand what's going to happen.
And what we sometimes do is we do a focus group. So let's say this is a big change and all the mid-level managers that are going to have to be supervising these people are all going to be, right? Maybe a couple of them are comfortable with it, but we still require that they come to a focus group and let's talk about these issues together, and we have exercises designed so that we can bring it out. So, and some of the questions are, how do I supervise people if I can't see them or I don't know where they are? Right.
Yeah.
And then you get them to come up with their own solutions to that.
Yep.
So,
Sounds like we're all doing good work. What can I say?
there you go.
Yeah.
We do have a, I just got it yesterday. I haven't done it yet. Survey that the DC office is sending out to all of the people who are either anchors. If you have an assigned desk, you're an anchor. If you don't, you're a dynamic. So the anchor or dynamic questionnaire. So I'm about to answer it, and that way I'll know. We'll have some stats from that. So that was specifically designed to see if we can start measuring this too, and then have some feedback that we can then, respond to.
Yeah, that was
Actually, while this is up, well, go ahead.
sorry. That was a question that popped into my head as you were describing your survey process to determine.
Yes.
Do you?
This is,
I mean, it's one thing to look at, does this space work for me?
Right.
Do you also look at, does this space work for the team and our interactions with each other?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, I think, give you data to go to any client with and say, look, open space and being everywhere every time and having totally free to sit everywhere. But let me show you best practice.
Right.
Data that we have.
Yeah. And we measure amenities too. And what are amenities that are beneficial, and which ones is do the foosball table really bring together people and all that kind of thing. So we actually rank those as well.
Oh, yeah, that also occurred to me when you talked about your change management. I've seen so many offices where they have ping pong tables or foosball tables, even lounge areas that were intended to get to people to sit down and talk and interact with each other. But it became, no one uses them because you're goofing off if you use that.
So that's the cultural, that's part of our focus groups and part of the change management, and making sure leaders know that they have to support it.
Yeah.
And visibly, verbally, by their behavior, show, like get with people and sit down in those spaces and use them. Yeah.
okay, I'm running into a time crunch right now since a friend of mine who was just diagnosed with cancer is talking to my husband.
Oh, okay. We will let you know.
She's under some treatment. I do want to talk to her. So
okay.
I do have a story, very quick story. Yesterday I had to make a stop. I stopped at a Panera's, and they were going to bring me my food, and it was downstairs, and it's figuring out how they were going to find me. Well, I had the little signal thing, but I never realized. I was thinking about how they found me downstairs, and I said, that's really cool. Suppose you had a token, and if you were in an office where you were going in, you had a token, and they found you through that token because you were just new. You're going to a different desk, and I don't know. I just got a brain spike. So excuse me.
That's good.
But
It's
excuse
great
me.
to talk to both of you.
I enjoyed the conversation. Let me leave it so I can go talk to her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Love both of you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
All right, Joe. Well, thanks for recording this.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
If you got 2 seconds, back to your question about the agile.
I'm off.
And trying to go up the line and get support.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, very tough to do that from the middle and go upwards.
Right.
It seems to me that they need to find maybe 1 or 2 sponsors at the upper level who are saying, you have a point and we'd like to understand that better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the first thing I would challenge them with, is go find a couple of sponsors who are at least open-minded to explore what's going on here.
Yeah.
Then plan something that allows the upper management group to become more informed about what makes Agile work. And I don't mean in a classroom. I mean by shadowing a project or becoming involved in a project or conducting interviews of a project team or anything like that that gives them personal experience about why this worked and how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give them a book. Have them go,
Right.
sit down and get up close and personal with people on a team and see how that works. And then the last part of that is, what's my interface with that? So decisions that need to be made at our level, are we helping or hindering?
Mm-hmm.
Are you frustrated with us because of?
Right.
Are there things that you would recommend that we consider? And then the final step would be, how does Agile work at our level? That is, if the first steps have yielded value and they're becoming open-minded about it,
Mm-hmm.
we have the same problem when we go into big organization and do a team-based organization process. It's good for the production teams, it's good for the finance teams, it's good for the sales teams, but we, the executive team, don't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we push really hard on that, and sometimes are successful,
Right.
about they need to play by the same rules they're telling everybody else to play by.
Yeah.
Because if they're not modeling the way, the rest of it is going to be wasted investment.
Right.
It won't be tomorrow, but it will be, because sooner or later people are saying, well, they don't care whether we're agile or not,
Right.
because they don't value that. So why don't we just do what we've always done?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they seem to be asking for. And, a year or two later, they'll wonder, what's agile?
Right.
Because it wasn't supported and sponsored and reinforced.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have spent some significant money, and I'll bet they have,
Oh yeah.
to create an agile organization, one thing that might get their attention is, are you ready to waste this entire investment?
Right. Yeah.
Or are you aware of what's necessary at your level to make sure that you nurture and leverage that investment to the greatest degree possible?
Mm-hmm.
Because they tend to think more in dollars and cents.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if any of that has value, but
No, well, thank you.
just brainstorm kind of stuff.
Yeah, the next time I get stuck, I need to just brainstorm with you, Joe.
It's delightful to talk with you.
Same here. This is really, I'm glad that, so I have this, this group that I was the president of, and now I'm past president, and they meet on the second Wednesdays of every month in the evenings, except in January, February, March, they're daytime meetings. So I worked from home today so that I could go to because it's here near my house. So instead of going into the office, I worked from home, popped over there for two hours and then came back. But starting in April, then it will start back up to be a second Wednesday of every. So I'm really supposed to be there, and I love it. I'm a member of the organization, so I want to be there. But anyway, that's my conflict with this time, and that's why I had to miss. I think I was traveling for some of last fall, but I think one of those meeting dates, the December one, definitely conflicted because I had to MC the event because we have an annual event and I emceed it for the last 2 years. So anyway, so I love this. I just know that when April comes around, I'm going to be conflicted again. So, but February, March, we should be good.
Cool.
So,
see, I mean, we've got 20 people that signed up that said they want to be part of this.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 or 7 have participated one way or another. I've had as many as 6 and as few as 1.
Yeah, really?
November, it was me and one other. We had a great conversation, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm on Sarah Spangler's group, and I haven't been able to meet with Sarah Spangler's group yet because she had it on a Monday afternoon at 3 or 4, and that's in my work day. And if I have enough notice, I can block the time. So when she started it, I didn't have enough notice, and I had a standing meeting at that time every day. So I've tried to change that meeting. But the group is now meeting every other week. So depending on when that falls, I may or may not be able to. yeah. So
Well,
anyway, and I keep telling her, keep me on the list because I'm going to try to make one of those. So I think you probably have people like that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to get some information out and say, let's re-examine what will work for people, the most people. If there's
Yeah.
something to change, happy to do that.
Yeah.
In any case, it's the old thing of
I know.
trying to make sure all the cats are going in somewhat the similar direction.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. This has been very meaningful for me.
Good.
To reconnect with you and whoever else is on the call, but just the consistency of you and Rita and Jennifer didn't get back to me, so she might be traveling. But oh, hold on a second. No, she couldn't. She said she sent a note that she couldn't make it tonight. So, but yeah. And she and I sometimes connect in Atlanta because she has a second home in Atlanta now. And that's one of the places that is one of my 8 offices that I get to. So
You don't have a Cincinnati office?
no, not yet.
Open one. Come on.
I know. Not yet. We're in Detroit, I think is the closest one, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. How far are you from Nashville?
I don't
Pretty
know.
far?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a day's drive.
We just proposed a project in Nashville, and I had to staff it from all of our regional offices because we don't have an office there. But I'm really hopeful we get it. Could be a really cool project. So,
Cool. Yeah. We
yeah.
did, let's see, Nashville, that's Grand Ole Opry, right?
Yeah.
We did a big conference there years ago and stayed at what's that huge hotel, the Grand Ole Opry Hotel or something like that.
Okay.
It was amazing.
Was it great? Yeah.
500 rooms kind of thing, spread all over the place, atriums everywhere.
Yeah.
It was really something.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Well, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I can remember how to turn it off.